Join me today as we talk about using your VA loan benefit. Hi, I'm Cheryl, and welcome to Sold by Cheryl. First and foremost, thank you so much for your service. This is an earned benefit, and I am here to help you get the most out of that earned benefit. Step 1, pre-approval. If you are currently working with a lender, wonderful. I will work with that lender. If you don't have a lender, please let me know. I can give you a list of lenders that I know specialize in VA loans. You can interview them and you can pick whichever loan officer you feel like you connect the best with. And then once we have your pre-approval amount, we can go ahead and set up a search and we can work within your budget to find you your perfect home. Step 2, saving for closing costs. So this is where there's probably the most confusion and most misinformation. So I'm going to address it right off the bat. Your VA benefit covers 100% of the mortgage, the purchase price of the home. It does not include your closing costs. So I always use 4%. So for our entire series, we're going to use that you got approved for $275,000, but you're only going to spend $250,000. So 4% times $250,000 is roughly about $10,000. Now that's a little high, but I'd rather go a little bit higher with our estimate. So you need to budget in around that much money. Now it's a lot of money. And usually the first thing somebody will say to me is, I bought on my VA loan before and I didn't have to pay a penny in closing costs. Well, you did, you just didn't realize it. Usually what happens is this. Let's say you bought 10, 15 years ago and you bought a house for $150,000. Closing costs at that point weren't quite as high as 4% just because everything goes up. So let's say you paid 3% and you put $5,000 down in escrow. Well, what they do is they take your closing costs out of your escrow. So you may have even gotten a check back at closing, but they took that $5,000 in escrow and they paid the closing costs from that. So that's typically where people will say, oh yeah, I guess you're right. I did put that down and then I got a check back at closing. So closing costs have never been paid for. It's just that now the price of homes is more expensive. The price of insurance is more expensive. Taxes are higher because now the purchase price of the home goes up. So it's just more expensive. So the cost is a lot more. And if you're worried about that you don't have that $10,000, that's okay. We have some options, and I'm going to go into that a little bit later in the series. But for your purposes, if you could save that money, that makes us way more competitive. If you can't quite save enough for that, that's okay too. Even if you just have half, I can work with that, and that's a little bit easier because we'll have to ask the seller for closing costs. And like I said, we'll address that later. But we want to be competitive because when you see the house that you really, really want, I don't want you to lose it because, we have to ask for closing costs or anything like that. So please understand that closing costs are not a part of the VA benefit on that. The good news is even though it's $10,000, it's a lot. It also, we put prepaids in that little bucket too. Prepaids are your inspection, the appraisal if they charge that, the survey, things that you would pay before closing. We kind of put into that bucket as well. So when you get to the closing table, it's not going to be as much. The other thing with closing costs too is that they do collect in advance for insurance and taxes so that they have a little bit of cushion in escrow. So even though it's a lot of closing costs, a lot of that is actually for you, and they're kind of putting it in that piggy bank that's going to be kept for you later on. So now that we've discussed closing costs and how important it is to save for them, we're going to go on to our next subject, which is setting up the search and finding a house that fits the VA criteria. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you found the video helpful. If so, please hit subscribe and ring the bell for notifications of more videos created just for you.